It's my honor to introduce today's moderator, Yuwa Vosper. Yuwa is We Act for Environmental Justice's Policy and Regulatory Manager, working as part of We Act's Federal Policy Office to influence executive, legislative, and regulatory agency actions and educate key stakeholders on matters that support reforms in toxics, climate education, and federal investments in electrification. Yuwa is We Act's project lead for their lead service line replacement project. The goal of this project is to facilitate full lead service line replacement and is funded by Google.org. Collaborating with Blue Conduit and NRDC, the project will create a software inventory tool to map lead service line replacement projects in Buffalo, Richmond, and New Orleans. Welcome, Yuwa, and I'll turn the conversation over to you.
Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So hi again, I'm Yuwa Vosper. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to speak with you. And I have the pleasure of introducing our wonderful panelists. So first we have Miss Brenda Culler or Culler? Culler.
Yeah.
And she has been involved in Lake Erie and water quality communications for 20 years as a reporter and as staff with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Offices of Coastal Management. For the past 5 years, she's worked with Cleveland Water and is now the lead program manager for the Cleveland Water. And Brenda has played a key role in the development of Cleveland Water's lead awareness campaign and childcare lead service line removal program. Welcome, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for being here.
Next, we have Miss Yvette Jordan. Yvette has a keen interest in educating her community on the importance of advocating for safe water. Ms. Jordan was born and raised in New York City and worked in local government for over 20 years, including in the New York City Mayor's Office for Children and Families as a policy analyst. Her activism in Newark began as a founding member of Newark's Education Workers Caucus, a group of educators committed to fighting for social justice issues with education for all educators, students, and their families. Since the lead water crisis in Newark, Ms. Yvette Jordan has been a fierce advocate for environmental justice. Welcome, Ms. Yvette. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Yuwa. Happy to be here.
And next we have Ms. Meg Trubee. Meg Trubee manages the day-to-day public affairs efforts for Denver's water's lead reduction program. She has extensive natural resources, policy, public engagement, and communications experience in government and nonprofit sectors. And these wonderful panelists are with us today to discuss more about lead service line replacements in the city. And so I'm going to ask each panelist to kick us off to give a short history of the background of lead service line replacement in your city. Since each of you are in very different areas with very different demographics, infrastructure, it would be lovely to hear a little bit about the demographics of the city and how all of this has worked. And I'm going to start, let me see, I usually do alphabetical order, so it's Brenda.
All right, well, Cleveland Water is the 10th largest water system in the United States. We serve approximately 1.45 million customers, and those customers reside in the city of Cleveland, which is on Lake Erie, as well as approximately 80 other communities throughout Cuyahoga County and parts of 5 surrounding counties. So we have a unique challenge of we not only answer to one city government, we answer to counties as well as many other cities. Cleveland Water started producing water in 1856 and sending that to our customers. In 1953, we stopped. That was the last year that we allowed lead to be used as service line connections. For many decades, we've been removing lead on the city side when we do water main repairs and replacements. And in 2018, we started removing full lead service lines anytime Cleveland Water disturbs a city-owned lead service line. In 2020, we launched our childcare lead service line removal program. We were able to obtain $2.5 million in state and H2 Ohio funding for this program. which has successfully removed all lead service lines that we know exist at childcare's Serrato direct service area. And we've also been able to remove lead service lines at homes that have been placarded, where lead paint issues have been remediated, and we're working through the backlog of those homes, hoping to continue this with federal infrastructure dollars if we're awarded those.
Thank you so much. And a lot of us are relying on those federal infrastructure dollars. Next we have, okay, I was literally doing the ABCs in my head. Meg Trubee.
Thanks so much, Yua. For Denver Water, we are the state's oldest water utility, a few years over 100 years old now in 2022, and we serve 1.5 million people in the Denver metro regional area using only 2% of the state's water resources. We are the third largest landowner in the state to provide our source water, being that we're in the semi-arid West. And we have about 3,000 miles of pipe in and around the metro area to service all of our customers. Similar to Brenda, it was back in the in the 40s when Denver Water banned the use of lead service lines in our plumbing standards. However, we found that homes 1951 and earlier in our area tend to be those that have lead service lines. The water that Denver Water serves is lead-free. However, as we all know, lead can get into the water column by traveling through lead service lines and internal plumbing. Here in the Denver Water service area, customers own the service line, which connects at the main, and from the point at which it connects at the main in the street, all the way to that first point of connection in the home that is 100% owned by the customer. Denver Water has only one exceedance for the lead and copper rule that happened in 2012. And at that time, it kicked off a series of actions from the water utility to try and investigate and understand what happened to the water supply. While that was going on, starting in 2016, Denver Water was actively replacing lead service lines anytime they were encountered from leaks or regular maintenance operations. It took about 5 years for Denver Water in the state to complete the investigation about what happened in 2012 and present the study to the state health department. In 2018, the state health department designated orthophosphate as the optimal corrosion control treatment for Denver Water's system. However, being in the arid west of the United States, orthophosphate is an additive which acts like a nutrient in our waterways, contributing to degrading water quality and becoming a challenge for wastewater treatment plants downstream that would require significant upgrade in order to treat to today's water quality standards. So there were a consortium of stakeholders, including Denver Water, environmental groups, watershed groups, and beyond, that rallied together and said there had to be a better way. They completed a stakeholder process in 2018, and through that, today's program called the Lead Reduction Program was born. And this program is the first in the nation where Denver Water successfully lobbied for a variance from the Safe Drinking Water Act to complete this program as an alternate to optimal corrosion control treatment. This program has 5 components. The first is changing water chemistry, elevating the pH to reduce the likelihood of lead entering the water column. The second is creating a publicly accessible online inventory of where all of our 64,000 to 84,000 lead service lines are located. The third is a filter program that a free water filter pitcher and replacement cartridges are provided at no cost to customers while enrolled in our program. Fourth is the lead service line replacement aspect of the program, the heart of the program, where we at no direct charge to customers replace that entire line. The fifth is the underpinning of the program, which is all of our communications, outreach, and education efforts that are aimed at reaching our various diverse communities. The Denver metro region is really diverse. There are 32 different languages spoken in the area. However, if we think about the demographics of the area, we are in ranked order, Caucasian, followed by Latino, African American, then Asian American, Pacific Islander, respectively. Our program is completely bilingual, and we found, at least in the city and county of Denver, for that distinct boundary, that we can reach 95% of our customers by having a bilingual English-Spanish program.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Yvette, you're next.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to be succinct. I'm from Newark, New Jersey, and the Newark water crisis in Newark, New Jersey really impacted so many people here, actually everyone. And we're a city of a little shy of 300,000. And the demographics are, we're diverse. However, we have a large African-American population, Latino, and some Asians also. But it's primarily, and this is the, well, for example, in my school, 100% of the students are on free lunch. In terms of the housing stock, over 70% of the residents are renters. So the issue in Newark is trying to find these lead service lines when many of the landlords are absentee. And that was really a problem. So what happened in 2017, lead exceedances were happening in Newark. The mayor was informed in 2018. These exceedances really exceeded the federal action level, and went so high that advocates felt it necessary to inform the city government, you've got to do something. When that happened, it took a while for the mayor actually doing something, but without actually going into everything that happened. In August of 2018, the citizenry was supplied with filters and bottled water. And lead service line replacement began in the following March. So the city received a lot of money and an influx of dollars from the state and county, and replaced almost 23,000 lead service lines in a couple of years, which is like major. So we're happy about that, of course. However, some people are still monitoring. We're still monitoring the water. Some people are still fearful of it. But that's the short end of what happened in Newark, New Jersey. So as we go on, I'll shed more light. Thank you. You're muted.
I couldn't unmute myself. I was using the space bar and it was doing nothing. Thank you so much. And I was kind of writing down notes from everybody's discussion because it was so illuminating to learn how to eradicate these problems. And as I said, everything's so different when it comes to different demographics, cities, city rules and ordinances. So hearing from all of you, equity is front and foremost. It's clear that there are historic and current inequities, but everyone needs safe drinking water. It's a human right, right? Safe drinking water. So how do we work to achieve safe drinking water for everyone? And I'll open it up to whoever wants to start first.
So I'd like to chime in because Cleveland water is safe. We had installed orthophosphate as well as pH control And those went active at all 4 of our water treatment plants with source water from Lake Erie in 1997. Since that time, our lead compliance monitoring levels have always been below the federal action level. And for more than a dozen years, they've been below 5 parts per billion. So in Cleveland Water, we have the unique challenge of, as our water is safe, it's convincing customers that tap choice is the right choice, even when they have a lead service line. Because they don't hear about good water, they hear about other cities' problems. And even when we take the lead out, through our childcare lead service line replacement program, we still have to spend a lot of time on that education element of your water is safe. Here's how we can show it to you. And yes, after we take a lead service line out, you can then request that your water sampled just so you have that peace of mind that the water is safe. Very few people are taking us up on that offer to sample afterwards, but we still know that our biggest challenge with water equity issues is convincing people that tap water, which is 1,000 times cheaper than plastic water, is the right choice for them. And as an industry of water professionals, both at the Ohio level as well as the state level, we need to do a better job collectively of championing safe water when it is safe and not spreading undue fear when that fear shouldn't exist.
I want to underscore some of what you said, Brenda, but also I think the important thing is education, and that when people are challenged in their communities to really understand, first of all, what is going on in terms of their health and the public's health. Once the issues are addressed, it's extremely difficult getting back that trust. And this is what so many politicians are having a problem with, because they're not appearing as if they are upfront. And then when they're caught like as a deer is in headlights, they realize, oh, okay, I've got to backpedal and fix this. When it's fixed, though, the citizens, the residents, those who are really impacted by this are left saying, I don't trust you. And that's really a problem. I think it's a problem for so many, especially in the Black and Brown community, because in so many areas, they are not trusting of government in the first place. And then when it's something for your public health, it's like, what the heck am I going to do now? So that's a problem.
I just want to mention, someone has put in a Q&A that the lead and copper rule has deficiencies. The lead and copper rule, it's a regulatory standard, but it's not a public health standard. There's no safe level of lead, yet the level of exceedance for the lead and copper rule is 15 parts per billion. Also I see that Yvette, you're typing in the chat, but I wanted to ask you that live to speak more about how Newark employed local people working with LIUNA, and LIUNA should mean Laborers International Union of North America.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Charlotte, for that question. And I had planned on mentioning that later on, but anyway, what was very important for our mayor, and this really dovetails on what I was saying with Brenda, when the politicians are backing off and saying everything is fine, and then jumping in and saying, okay, we'll fix it now. But what happened in Newark is that our mayor, Baraka, he actually said, okay, we're going to fix this. However, he demanded that the anybody who was fixing it, and LIUNA actually led this, you must hire local residents so they have a skill at the end of the day. And this was phenomenal, fantastic. It hadn't happened before, and it's a model. So I think LIUNA should be praised, as well as our mayor. And here is an example of a public-private partnership that is really benefiting our residents. So many people learned how to actually extract and change and fix lead service lines, and this is like great. And the citizens are happy about that. However, there's still a trust issue in the community.
And I believe the phrase is you move at the speed of trust. So, and our next question, so because every city is different and there are different obstacles to tackle, what are some of the biggest challenges for your city and how did you overcome this? And I'll open it to the floor. Brenda, you look excited.
It's a good question. What is the biggest challenge? And I think the reason you have just a little bit of a blank stare, it's sort of which challenge do we want to talk about and focus on, right? Because there are many. So I think, for Denver Water, we are grateful that we do not have a health crisis here, that our water is also safe. We are also blessed that the majority of people who are served Denver Water's water trust the water, although bottled water certainly still is, a big part of a lot of people's lives. I don't know that I would hang my hat on any one thing as the biggest challenge. I would say some of the things that we are continually focusing on from the communications and outreach perspective is how do we ensure that we are continuing to interact with harder to reach communities, sensitive populations, underserved communities. I'm not sure.
So
is it me or
Meg froze?
Oh,
and
okay.
I'll chime in until she comes back.
Okay.
I feel the exact same way, but with Meg is there's not one huge challenge. There's lots of baby challenges. And I equate this to the world's most complicated jigsaw puzzle that I will fix. I will figure out the solution, put all the pieces together. Some of our challenges you're going to face if you're looking at finding the most vulnerable communities is we have a lot of customers, and every single one of those addresses, before we go out and take out a lead service line, we have to do in-house research to make sure that that connection is lead. Because when we do dig up inspections, those come at a price tag. And it's great when you find copper because you can update your inventory, but it's also like, oh, I just spent $700 between dig up and restoration costs that could be taking out lead where it exists. So we have the internal paperwork challenge. And if we have a list of addresses that are, pregnant women, homes that provide housing to new babies, the most vulnerable populations from a scientific perspective of lead exposure, then that's great. But those lists from whether it's the health department, whoever issues birth certificates, whether it's foster care units, whether it's a list of children with high blood lead levels, those are all protected by other regulations. So we have to figure out a way to what regulations do we need changed or updated so we have access to that data to do the right thing. That's one of the challenges. Other challenges are simply convincing the customers that this is not a scam. Myself, I had an intern as well. We called every childcare that had a lead service line, and we got hung up on like 90% of the time, the first time calls, because they thought we were a telemarketer or Prince and Dubois or whatever foreign country, like trying to get their money. We're like, no, this is a real program. So until the local media ran a story, like bragging about the program, like we at Cleveland Water is actually doing this, then we started to get more, the better response when we were, letting childcares voluntarily sign up. About midway through the program, once we had the method of lead service line removal for childcares down pat, which is a little bit different than your standard house because they are a business that has to close if they're going to be without water for more than an hour. Once we had figured out through our contract assistance team, they did an amazing job of getting this figured out with our contractors. Then we said, the city-owned portion of the service line, we're going to take that out. We also know statistically that if for every lead service line we find on the city side, only 6% of those homes are going to have lead on the customer side. And then when the federal lead and copper rule revision came down, we knew it was probably going to include downstream galvanized need removed too. So we were keeping track of those. And we went and removed all the downstream galvanized as well, which is only like 2.5% of those that have lead potential on the city side. So we really, did outreach at first to get childcare to say, let me participate. And then once we had success, we said, hey, childcare, we're going to take out the lead for you. And we're going to show you that we're doing the right thing. And it's been a really good way to work, is showing the community you're doing the right thing.
I really like the mentions of I think the overarching theme has been trust. Building trust with residents is not something that is gained very easily. So going into the communities and making sure they know you and they know your face and they know your organization is quite key. And I have a question. How do you disseminate public education information to the residents and to households so they can know exactly what's going on without, instilling fear?
I'll take this first since I'm a teacher. This is my bailiwick. Okay, so at first, the city was disseminating information in pamphlets and just like leafleting, homes. So that was not enough. And we said, you've got to have things in several languages, first of all, and it's got to be no more than 8th grade level. So this is for everybody out there listening. And if you're listening on a recording later on, don't write up anything above an 8th grade level, because the average individual reads at that level. In addition, things have to be, images should be used. So you could use caricatures, you can use video, you can use as many mediums as you can hitting somebody, because one look will not reach everybody. So you've got to hit somebody like 3, 4, 5 times at least for some information actually sticking. So we did that. And then also, of course, disseminating information in terms of speaking engagements. And we did a lot of those, speaking in community meetings and having webinars ourselves. So we had town halls. So those are ways we actually shared information. But galvanizing people to come out and understand it's important was also a challenge. Yeah.
I'm going to piggyback of you, Yvette, and sorry for my technical challenge. I'm not really sure what happened to my fully charged computer over there. We do that combination of direct mail, social media, website, videos, articles, etc. But one thing that we have found to be really effective, and this kind of ties back to what I was going to say previously, is we have an ambassador program where we partner with trusted community organizations who know the residents in their particular neighborhoods and are trusted messengers. Because oftentimes people don't even know the water utility or know who you are. They're just turning on the tap for whatever their need is and going about their business. And those trusted community partners are so important in terms of spreading information, building trust, helping people know where to go to get resources. That, for anyone trying to figure out how to go about this, I think employing those local, I mean, neighborhood specific, really small, like within the city and county of Denver, we've got 57 different neighborhoods, and there may be a neighborhood organization that really only services 2 or 3 neighborhoods. But they're the ones who are on the ground, and they know what's happening there, and they are the people who live there, and they represent those folks. And so they're really important people in the process. And so those partnerships have carried us far. And the last piece I want to say is, I was going to say about the equity, that those community partners are so important to our program, and we really value the work that they do and the feedback they provide us. And I think one of the challenges we have is recognizing how much they, as community organizations and small local nonprofits, are facing right now, whether it's the childcare industry or it's a neighborhood group that's focused on Black and Brown communities. There are so many things facing those communities in general that the nonprofits that are focused in those areas oftentimes are struggling themselves too. And so that can be a challenge to figure out how, as a water utility, we can support them in their work and also use them as partners.
So just agree with everything you ladies have already said. We came up with, prior to starting the lead service line replacement program, some communications pieces for how to help customers identify if they have lead risk in their water system. Those 3 steps are check, test, date. Check our website, do the magnet and penny test on your service line where it enters the home, and then date your plumbing. If you have a faucet that predates 1986, you may have a copper service line, but you may still have lead in your actual faucet, because inside the wetted surface area of the faucet, it can have unlimited lead. And when you hear about a school district that has lead in the water, the lead's not in the water, it's in the faucet. So we need to call things what they are. They're doing faucet sampling. Does this faucet have lead in it? Yes, then let's replace it. Let's find funding to replace the faucet, which is the issue, and not point the finger at the water department when they're not the issue. It's a little key things like that. And the other communication piece we started in 2018 was healthy water habits for everyone's home. And we're very fortunate because here in Cleveland, we have the Great Lakes. We literally have a virtually unlimited supply of water. Denver doesn't have that. The West doesn't have that. But our healthy water habits for all customers are clean, flush, consume cold. We can repeat these 3 steps of clean, flush, consume cold 20 times during the 20-minute presentation. It's clean off your aerator screens, because that's what catches sediment and particulate matter. Flush your water line at your faucet if it's stagnated and not used, because you wouldn't drink a glass of water that's been sitting on your counter for a week. So don't drink that glass of water if you've been away on vacation for a week. Flush that old water out. And the third one is consume cold. And this is the one where we're going to start, we're developing the education program targeted at young women and women of parents of babies, is always use cold water for consumption purposes, whether it's making mac and cheese, washing off fruits and vegetables, especially when you're making baby infant formula, because hot water is more corrosive than cold water. And there are additional metals that come from your hot water tank. So you don't want to use that and ingest it when you're dealing with that system. And those materials, we have brochures in English and Spanish, and we have these brochures available on every Cleveland water inspector vehicle that's out on the street. So if a customer has questions or resident has questions about lead, they just hand them a brochure and say, read up this. It has our lead inquiry line in it. Call Brenda or the other folks who answer the phone. And because the first line of communication is the employees at the water department, and we have to make sure we're teaching them the simple way to communicate about your water system's efforts too.
Thank you. That was very informative. I did not know about the cold water, but I use a filter, the pure water filter.
You use hot water in a filter, it will ruin your filter.
Well, it's the you put it in the refrigerator. It's not the filter on the faucet.
Okay.
See, I'm learning too. And another question I have, how do you reach sensitive populations? And I'm going to target this to Meg and Brenda. How do you reach sensitive populations?
We work really hard to reach those facilities and properties that serve children 5 and under and expecting people. And so we are attempting direct communication with those schools and childcare facilities so that we can gain permission. Since the customer owns a service line, we have to get consent before we can do the work. So we are using direct mail, phone call, email, and door knocking. We have found we're pretty lucky in our rate of return for consent forms. Really, 2 mailings and an actual door knock has been successful here. But reaching other sensitive populations, vulnerable populations, is really done through this extensive community outreach that we do, both directly and through our community partners that are those trusted messengers that can get deeper into different communities. So those are our tactics to reach sensitive populations.
And with Cleveland Water, we started with kind of the low-hanging fruit of what data do we have access to, and that was the child cares. In Ohio, child cares are licensed by the state of Ohio. We know that there are in-home care providers that don't take up state licensing, but we don't have their list. So with state licensed child cares, we analyzed every single address for ones that could have a lead service line. And because the city of Cleveland owns the city-owned portion of the service line, where the majority of the lead is, that's how, we contacted them, said, we're going to be doing this. Let us know if you want to come first. And we kept on communicating with them. We sent out postcards that was followed by a letter that was followed by weekly emails and phone calls. And like I said, reaching out to the media, getting the media to do positive coverage is another step. So if you're pursuing a program to remove lead service lines, start with a population that everyone agrees shouldn't have a lead service line, infants, child cares, etc. We also analyzed every single one of the main school buildings in our direct service area, which is approximately 500 school buildings. And most of the time, school buildings don't have a lead service line because the connection is just too large. Lead service lines are only 1 inch smaller in diameter in our service area. Some systems have 1.5 inches smaller, but lead is very heavy, and it just wasn't cast in increments larger than that because it would be extremely heavy to handle, hold, and move. Most schools are large buildings. They have a 2 to 8 inch connection going into them, so they're not going to have a lead service line. But we did analyze all of those. And then we started moving on to like facilities that provide big brothers, big sisters, those type of facilities where we have addresses for and we can reach out to them directly. And then we encourage them every single time. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors that we're going to be pursuing more of these lead service line replacements as funding becomes available. So our communications are a work in progress, and we're looking for ideas that others have to see if that's going to work for our system. And like I said, some of those ideas we're still fleshing out, like every other public water system who has to do a lead service line replacement plan and have that done in exactly 2 years and 3 days from today.
Thank you so much for that input. And we have a question from the audience. First a comment, then a question. So great information from Yvette about training and using local labor, but could Meg and Brenda comment if there's been a similar program in Denver or Cleveland to train and use local contractors?
So we use local contractors for our replacement projects. It's currently the contractor being used for the childcare is the one that was already had bid on and was awarded for the contract for Cleveland. We will continue to putting RFPs out for contractors to bid on those projects. And I'm kind of new to the labor side of it, but the city of Cleveland does have other requirements in place for employees and workers. And we also know that the current contractors are looking for people who want to pursue that as their career field. If someone wants that as their career field, they need to reach out to the companies that exist to, say, hey, will you train me? Because those companies are going to make money if they can bid on more contracts, but they can't do that unless they have the right staff.
Thank you so much. So now we are going to open it solely to the audience. So if you have an audience question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. It's at the bottom of your toolbar. You should see a button that looks like 2 dialog boxes saying Q&A. And in the meantime, I will monopolize the conversation and continue to ask questions.
Can I also address what
sure.
Brenda was saying, please? Thank you, because she made a couple of points I wanted to illuminate. And that is, I think it's great that you're always looking for local contractors. However, I think in certain communities, and I'm talking about Black and Brown in particular, it is important to recognize that because they're not there, they may feel shut out. And sometimes people have to go the extra mile. And whether that is finding them in the community, going into school, setting up programs where there is a feeder program into a apprenticeship opportunity, these things are critical. And without that, the local contractors will remain who they are, and a lot of people will be omitted from these opportunities. I've seen it happen, and it's not comfortable. It just isn't. However, it's got to be done.
I do agree that with that statement, a lot of times Black and Brown communities are not thought of when, lead and pipe removal, they're not getting a certain training. We Act for Environmental Justice has a worker cooperative that helps Black and Brown communities, especially the recently incarcerated or just released from incarceration, find these jobs and be able to work and have gainful employment to like a permanent hire and things like that in the community with solar panels or whatever. So a lot of times when we're talking about how to build these and bring RFIs, it's also, to train, because when you're coming into the community or an environmental justice community or a frontline community, we want to ensure that people who live in the community are working within their community and able to build that wealth within their community. So that's very important. We have one question. That's Christmas. And this one's for Yvette. When Newark began the lead service line replacement, how did Newark replace owner side lead lines when houses were owned by absentee landlords? Did Newark require consent from property owners?
Okay, Tom, thank you for that question. I think you already know the answer to that. However, I'll share it with everyone. The city of Newark did something unique and innovative, and that is they actually wrote up legislation, city legislation, which had to be passed by the state legislature and signed off by the governor, which would allow them to actually go in these absentee landlords' homes, because otherwise the families and these people who were so they were exposed, and their children were the most vulnerable of us all. Our children were exposed to these high lead levels. So the city was like, okay, how are we getting in there? Oh, I know, we'll change the law and we'll make it possible for us actually going in there in these circumstances. So it was very narrowly written. However, it was an opportunity they seized so that they could go into these homes with renters, and it was extremely successful. I'm sure some people weren't happy, but it was great. So thank you for that question, Tom.
And Yvette, I wanted to thank Newark for being the lead on that, because I personally know how hard it is. We've been trying to track down the landlords for 4 properties for multiple weeks, and to get the lead out on the customer side. And we won't touch the city-owned lead because until we have that customer-owned agreement, if it's a full lead service line. So my wish list, which is on my dry erase board, is to replicate what New Jersey did in passing that legislation specifically for lead service line removal. So thank you.
Yes, Denver also uses Newark as an example. We do not have that type of ordinance or legislation here in Denver that would allow us to enter the property with renter consent. So we use Newark as the shining example of other possible ways to get the job done.
I have a question. So when we talk about community, and part of the community is the utility. And a lot of communities may not know how to navigate the utility if they know they have a lead service line. So how do you navigate utilities and cooperating with them if need be, or going against them if need be, to get the service line replaced? Do you call the utility to tell them we found an exceedance, or like what happens? Like, how do you, I guess, if you need to, gain partnership with the utility?
So in Denver, we have an 811 program that's call before you dig. And so that's a utility locate so that you can identify any utilities underground. But much before any construction is done, Denver Water is working with other city agencies and utilities to talk about what are other city projects, what's infrastructure there that we may need to talk about. That could be even transportation oriented, right? So that we aren't taking important bus stops out of commission for a period of time. So I think that might be where your question is going. But that's kind of how it goes for Denver Water.
And so, I see, Brenda, are you poised?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I kind of don't understand the question because we are the utility.
You are the utility.
We are the utility. So I guess the thing I wanted to add is if a customer has a lead service line and they have the means to remove a service line themselves, anytime a customer changes out their service line, we have an inspector go out and check out the city-owned material because it's exposed when they're replacing their customer side. And we replace the city-owned side if it's lead within usually it's 10 days. Sometimes it's a little longer if our crews can't get to it because those are done by city crews usually. Sometimes contract crews, it just depends on the circumstances. So we want customers to know that ability is out there right now. They replace a lead service line on their side. We're going to come out. We're going to give them the filter with the pitchers. We're going to give them a water sample kit. We're going to give them flushing instructions and how to use all this materials. And most importantly, we have a lead inquiry line. It's not, call this number and get a punch. It's a direct line that I answer and a couple other staff here that we know the answers to the questions that customers have. The other important aspect is, I know Yvette mentioned they have multiple languages, and Meg mentioned they have multiple language. We do as well, and we have a couple staff in our office that are fluent in Spanish, Puerto Rican dialect specifically. So we have started through the childcare program to put on either the top of the email, the bottom of the letter, or sometimes even like one side's English and one side's Spanish, that on there. And it has, in certain zip codes, it has significantly increased the response to the level like we were pleasantly surprised. The worst case scenario is that you have Google Translate, and one day the folks who were usually take the person that needs a Spanish speaking folk call, I put on Google Translate and held the phone up to my computer, and it took what they said, it repeated in English, and then I typed my response in and hit the where the Google speaks, and it read it back to them. So they understood enough that I don't speak Spanish. I'm going to get their contact information and have someone call them back. And it was such a an amazing aha moment. The other tool that we're using from a technology perspective is if a customer calls and doesn't know anything about where their service line is, I will say, hey, do you have an iPhone? And I will call them through FaceTime on my iPhone and literally have them walk to their basement, do the magnet and penny test, and I'll do screen captures of photos. So we have a record of the address and can enter into our GIS. And if funding becomes available and they have a lead service line, they're going to get their lead service line removed first. So those are just some of the unique ways that we're using tools and technology to overcome barriers and challenges.
Thank you. I thought you were going to tell another story with the language, because I've had some nightmares. I forced myself to learn Spanish. Well, I didn't force myself. I actually love
No entiendo. That's about it.
And but I had my friend, she's a teacher, and she's like, can you translate this for me? And she did. And then I guess she had texted me to ask me to translate something else, but I didn't get it in time. So she got to Google Translate and she typed in something, and the student didn't have a clue. That was like, she didn't know. So I was like, yeah, I don't know what Google Translate was thinking. That doesn't mean that. And I'm not even that proficient in Spanish. So finally, to close us out, what pearls can you leave with the audience members? And I'm gonna give everybody an opportunity to speak. What is one pearl you want to leave with the audience members about today's session? We can ruminate on this for a bit.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Community residents are experts in the community. They know what they need. They know how to articulate it. However, the challenge becomes for those in power to honor that. And what I mean by that is that you have to be accepting of what they know. And many times I find that community engagement is challenging because they don't feel they are honored. So what I do every day is try to help them empower themselves. So I want to leave you with so push you to hear people and what they're saying.
I'm going to piggyback off of that because I totally agree with you, Yvette, that listening to the community is so important. And I think it's, in my mind, the pearl is doing that community engagement and taking it back and integrating it into your program design. That's the piece right there. The way it is important when doing engagement that people feel heard. It is also important for those community members to feel like the information that they provided, the time that they took, will be used in a effective way. And it didn't just come to talk into a void. And so really figuring out ways to embed their feedback into the program. Maybe that's updating your images. Maybe that's what neighborhood you go to first. Maybe that's honoring the people who came before you at the beginning of the meeting. There's all sorts of ideas around that, but really thinking through and taking the time, urging leadership to let you take be a little bit slow to go fast later on so that you can get program design correct that incorporates community feedback. That would be my pearl.
Meg and Yvette, wonderful advice. I couldn't agree more. So I'm going to go a different direction. And that direction is just be persistent. When you have gotten the feedback from the community and are adjusting your programs and you have a good thing to offer, keep offering it, because people's lives are busy and hectic and chaotic, and keep being persistent It's saying, knocking on the door, can we do a service line inspection, sending out the email, making that phone call. And it's really challenging to do when you get hang up after hang up, or when you just hear nothing and it's an empty void. But eventually you'll get a person and they'll respond and it'll spread from there, and hopefully good things can happen. And if you have one bad customer, don't let that shake your spirit. Just keep on pushing on.
And that's the end. And I kick it over to Kyra.
Well, I was just going to say, Yvette, Meg, and Brenda, thank you so much. I know for one, I'll be one of these people that reflects on and watches this video to take a bunch of this information and share it in a blog, share it broadly with our partners, but just kind of sit with it and do my best to do that integration as well. So thank you so much for your time and sharing this like super pertinent information. And we hope we'll see you back as well as you in the audience on November 3rd for our next conversation. So thank you so much, and thanks for the good work. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.